All right. Welcome, guys. For those tuning in live on Facebook and YouTube, you're in for a really, really awesome treat this evening. We have a great guest on the show on Pencil Leadership. So today we actually have Richard Matthews. Now, Richard is AKA The Alchemist, and he's an instructional designer and expert webinar and marketing machine builder. He's helped clients drive in more than $2 million in online sales. But the interesting thing is he does this while traveling full time across the U.S. with his family in an RV. And so today he's going to be talking about his passion of helping others harness the power of their stories to create a heroic brand. Richard, thanks so much for being on Pencil Leadership today.
Awesome. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me. And yeah, we are in the back bedroom in RV. I can break the illusion here. This is actually a back bedroom.
Awesome.
You can see kids' toys and stuff behind me and everything. It's just
is awesome.
A studio I've got set up in here that looks cooler than it actually is.
I think that's cool. Traveling around in an RV, living life and still being able to run your business. So what's that like? Like, how do you balance the RV life and building your businesses?
So it's a really interesting story because I started a number of years ago traveling. So it was 3 years ago, end of May, right? So recently we had our 3-year anniversary, and it's something my wife and I have been talking about for a number of years that we wanted to get into doing. And when we started, it was like we got a call one day and it was like, hey, your house is being sold, so you can't renew your lease at the end of the month. Oh, wow. So we had 28 days to move out. Anyways, we were like, well, we can go buy a bigger house or whatever, or rent a bigger house. And, or we could, now that we don't have a lease to worry about, we could take that RV trip we've been talking about because we have nothing holding us down. So we did. Yeah. And we bought an RV, renovated it, moved into the RV. What's funny is we'd spent about the previous 6 months practicing what it would like to work outside of an office, and we would go down to the beach and I'd work at the beach, or we'd go down to Balboa Park in San Diego and I'd work down there while the kids went to the zoo and stuff like that, just to see if I could work outside of an office, because I know we were talking about it, and then all this stuff sort of lined up and we could it made it happen. And over the course of the next 3 years, I've quadrupled my business in terms of team size and revenue and clients that we serve, and the kind of work that we do. All of it has grown. And my theory on that, and this directly related to your question of how do I balance that? I believe one of the big changes, at least for me, was the change from having a set routine where we were doing the same thing every week, right? And it's I could tell you on Mondays at 10 o'clock we were at my son's gym class, and on Wednesdays at 6 o'clock we were at my mom's house for dinner, and on and on every day it was like that. We had our schedule. I had my 8-hour work time that I had set out, and that never happened. It was always 12 hours that I was working every day. Right. And so when you have all this time that you have dedicated to fill up with work, you fill that time up with work, whether or not it's actually important or it's useful. And one of the things that I have noted over the last 3 years is that I'm always in cool places with cool people, around things that I want to be spending my time on outside of work. Not that I don't enjoy my work, don't enjoy my business. I love what I do. But when you're parked outside of Yosemite, and your options for the afternoon are, go hike waterfalls and stuff like that, and you're like, I have to move the ball in my business. Yep. Right. You have to move the ball forward. You're very, very intentional about what gets done and how well it gets done and how quickly it gets done. Right. And over the course of the last 3 years, my work time has gone from when we got onto the road 12 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, to I currently work about 4 hours a day, 4 days a week, and my business is 4 times larger.
That's awesome.
That's
so cool.
Yeah. So because of really focusing in on what's important, and having the motivation to get it done and get it done well and get it done quickly.
That's cool. I love that. That's so neat. Yeah, I definitely. I'm working on our van right now, trying to make it a camper van. So who knows? Maybe what the future might hold with that now. So it's awesome to see that it can be done. So that's cool. That's awesome.
It absolutely
can. How many kids do you have?
I have 4. So I've got a 10-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and behind our fake backdrop here, there's baby sleeping.
Oh, so. Well, I hope I don't wake him up.
No, get your headphones. I can hear you. She'll hear me, but
okay, perfect.
She'll wake up and want mom anyways.
I gotcha. That's cool. That's awesome. 4 kids. Wow. That's something. That's cool. So how you said you've been doing the traveling 3 years. How long have you been entrepreneurial?
So I started my first business, and I don't know if I would have called it a business at this point, but when I was 13.
Oh, wow.
And I got a loan from my dad. I convinced my dad to give me a loan for $50 to go down to, and he also like provided the transportation and whatnot to get down to the big box store. And I bought about $50 worth of the big candy bars, like the big nerd ropes and the 100 grand bars and the big Snickers and that kind of stuff. And I brought them to school, and like your proverbial, guy on the side of the street corner in New York showing his wares in this trench coat, I had my backpack full of candy and I was selling it to students on campus. And that went on for about 6 weeks. I made approximately $1,500 in sales before I had what I tell people is my first government shutdown. Because
That's awesome.
the I couldn't sell on campus without a business license, and I couldn't get a business license because I was 13.
Yeah, right. Jeez, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So now you're doing all sorts of things, right? You just started another venture, right?
Yeah. So our next venture is basically called Push Button Podcast, and we just started that this last year, and it was sort of an outgrowth of what we've been doing. So the thing that we were doing was helping brands sort of build what they were doing. Oh, look, their baby just woke up.
Oh, hey.
Here, let
hey,
me
little
hand
one.
this one over to mom.
Oh, that's okay. That's life. It's all right. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So anyways, what I was saying is what we were doing before is we were helping brands like online expert brands build their training and education, build their heroic story, which we're going to talk a little bit about later.
Yeah.
And building their courses, building their brand, building their sales materials, webinars, the whole sort of kit and caboodle, and then helping them manage their media buying with whoever they're getting their advertising through, and sort of strategize and advertise through that kind of stuff. And one of the things I told all of my clients, and still do, is that in order to sell whatever things we've created together, you need to have access to an audience to sell them to. And there's two ways you get access to the audience. You either buy the audience with ads, right? Or placements or media buying or whatever, where you take some way to get in front of someone's audience with money, or you build the audience, right? And you're going to build the audience with something like a podcast or a YouTube show or a Facebook show or guest blogging or whatever. And that's so it's time, right? You're investing time into get access to the audience. And I've always recommended my clients do both, right? And the reason is it takes time to build an audience, which obviously puts revenue further away from now, where ads you can do right now. But if you do ads, there's no long-term strategy to keep those people around and keep them coming back. So you pay for them, you get them into your course, and either you have some sort of content strategy to keep them engaged, or you lose them. Right. So you've paid for them. You want to keep them engaged. You want to have a content strategy on the other side. So I've always told my clients, you should do both. You should have ads for speed and you should have content for longevity. Right.
Yeah, I like that.
And omnipresence and that kind of stuff. And so I had this whole plan mapped out for clients of like, here's how you can build a weekly show. Here's all the things you need to do. Here's what you should do with the content, blah, blah, blah. And I just hand it all to them on a silver platter and be like, do this. And as you could probably imagine how that works, the overwhelming majority of my clients feel like that's a great idea, not going to happen, right? Like, and the ones that did do it, I had probably roughly 25% of my clients over the course of the last 10 years have done that, and those ones that did are all millionaires.
Wow.
Right. And because of their online trainings and stuff like that, and because of the size of the audience that they ended up building, and that is so it's really, really powerful. And one of the things that I did as a result of that was I started my podcast, my Hero Show podcast. And the Hero Show podcast, I was like, well, I got to figure out a couple of things. One, I had a message I wanted to share. And two, I was like, I got to figure out why my clients aren't doing this. There's got to be something about the process that's making it hard. So I sat down and recorded my first 8 episodes, and I managed to get 3 of them published before I was like, this is never going to happen, right? Because you know as well as I do, for every hour of content you produce, it's like 8 to 10 hours of work on the backside for show notes and articles and transcriptions and getting them up on all the different places and your distribution and like everything that goes into it. It's a metric butt ton of work. And so So my clients who were doing it and doing it well had a team of people around them to support them to get that out and get it done. Right. And the ones who didn't were the ones who didn't have that kind of support system to get it out. And so that's where Push Button Podcast was born. Nice. As I built it for my own podcast. I was like, I love my message and I love what we're doing for this podcast, and it needs to get done. So I built all the systems and processes. So I have a team of people who can handle everything. Like literally for my podcast, I don't do a damn thing. Like I show up and awesome. I do the interviews.
Yeah.
They do all the guest booking, and they do all of the, I'm getting people showing up on my calendar. They do all the research for that. They do as soon as I hit the stop button on our Zoom or whatever it is we're using on Zencaster to record things, it goes into the cloud. They get access to all of it. We get transcriptions, we get show notes, we get articles written, we get all the graphics created. It gets promoted all over social media. It gets out to all the distribution channels. Everything happens every week. That's and awesome. I don't touch a damn bit of it.
That's awesome.
So we started rolling that out to our clients early this year. We're currently hosting 3 shows on Push Button Podcasts, and we're looking to grow to our next 10 shows. We're opening up 7 slots. Cool. And we're looking for clients who are looking to build essentially a content marketing machine that they can sort of, front their whole, omnipresence online do it the same way I do, right? I put less than 4 hours a month into my podcast, and we've got over 100 episodes recorded, and I'm known all over the place now because of that.
That's cool.
And we just batch record the episodes at the beginning of the month, and everything else happens automatically.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like what I do. Yeah, I batch kind of record or schedule at least. So I have a bunch in the pipeline scheduled, so that helps a little bit. But yeah, the work that goes on in the back end after we're done talking here, and even before we talk, is a lot more than people realize. And so, I think that's a very, very cool idea and business that you've kind of created out of necessity almost.
Yeah. And I've built it in such a way, at least I hope that the way it's going to grow is it's all based on referrals and affiliates and stuff like that. So we pay lifetime commissions on referrals. And our hope is to get other podcasters like yourself and other things promoting our service. And we pay, because we pay lifetime commissions, if you were to refer like 5 people, we'd actually handle your show for free. So it works out really well that way, and we're looking to make it a win-win-win sort of thing for everyone involved. For our team members, for the businesses we're helping to grow their because the name of the game is attention today, and getting a content machine that you can actually get going, easy to actually keep up with. I think is going to be a huge game changer for people.
Yeah, because it's time. We all have the same amount of time, so if we can delegate some things like that, I think a lot of people will benefit from it. But that's cool, and I love the Hero Show podcast. I think that's an awesome show name for one, just because of myself, and I like superheroes so much. But so what's kind of the vision behind the Hero Show podcast? Kind of like, what is your goal, I guess, this year or something like that?
So my vision for the Hero Show podcast is really it's a cultural change I want to be a part of, right? And you probably know as well as I do, because you look like you're about my age, that if you grew up watching any of the cartoons that we grew up watching, the villain was always an entrepreneur, right? It's always a business guy who's pouring oil into the proverbial lake and killing the proverbial ducks, right? Like that's like always the bad guy, and and that's just a child's cartoon example. But if you look through most of our media and our academia and the way history is taught, we very rarely are entrepreneurs held up as heroes. They're always held up as villains. And you and I both know that entrepreneurs are what make the world go round, right? Everything that you interact with on a daily basis, doesn't matter what it is, at some point in its life was handled or touched by an entrepreneur.
Yep,
right.
Absolutely.
Literally everything in your life. And like talking all the way down to like the little thing that covers your drain in your sink or in your shower that keeps hair growing out. An entrepreneur invented that at some point, right? So the things you take for granted every day, entrepreneurs, right? Everything that we're doing today, communicating, is all because of entrepreneurs. And my mission really is to help change that conversation where we start looking at entrepreneurs as heroes, the same way that we look at firefighters and our military and doctors and stuff as heroes. Rightly so, but I think entrepreneurs should be included in that list, and we're looking to change that conversation a little bit. And the way we do it is we bring on entrepreneurs from all walks of life. We've had we've had some of the craziest cool guests ever, and we always
That's
ask someone
awesome.
at the end of the episode, do you know someone who's got a cool story that they can come share? And we issue
Yeah.
a hero challenge to that person. We get access to really cool stories because of that. And we bring them on and we just look at their story through the lens of a comic book superhero.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so it gets into that the hero story we were talking about, where you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
But there's some points that we cover for a story that actually comes from Marvel Comics, like their methodology for how they build a superhero. So we just look at your story through that lens, and I think it does a couple of things. I think one, it helps our guests to start thinking of themselves in a heroic light. And it shares positive stories into the world. And my goal is hopefully more and more people, they won't be afraid of sales, and they won't be afraid of making a profit, and they won't be afraid of giving their value to the world, because that's what entrepreneurs do, right? Is we exchange value for value, and we make the world a better place.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said Marvel and not DC. So that was good. That's just my preference. So no, I love that. And yeah, guys, check out Richard's show, Hero Show podcast, and definitely subscribe to that. I think that's an amazing thing. It's so good. And so, but yeah, you kind of mentioned about like finding our stories and becoming our own hero, kind of harnessing the power of our stories to create a heroic brand. I think that was a really cool statement.
Yeah. So a heroic brand is it's just a let me see if I can articulate this well. My idea for what a heroic brand is it's just that you have a brand built around your personality or your company's culture or something like that. That's actually there's a human element to it.
Yeah.
Right. And the human element, I think, is going to be vitally important for businesses going forward, because more and more people want to do businesses with people instead of corporations. Right. And you can see this even in big companies. Right. You're seeing more and more people forward at the front of their marketing. Right. If you watched Apple's big keynote they just did yesterday for all their software, everything they do for their marketing now, it's people focused. Right. They start with like, hey, here's our engineers and the teams who are working on it, and they do their education from a people standpoint. So anyways, it's just this idea that, hey, for a lot of businesses, having a personality that is out front is really important for growing the brand. And you can even see that with Flaw from what is that, Progressive Insurance and Geico and Mayhem. They insurance, for whatever reason, has really taken hold of the having a hero character that is at the front of their brand. And a lot of the brands that I work with, we do the same thing, right? You have the person, the CEO of the company who's out front, or they have a brand person. If you're familiar with Boom by Cindy Joseph, it's a cosmetics company owned by I'm going to forget his name. He teaches e-commerce stuff, and he hired Cindy to be the heroic brand for their cosmetics company, right?
That's awesome.
And so there's a lot of focus on that going forward, and I think it's a great place to start. So that's the idea of what a heroic brand is. It's a brand that is fronted by a heroic personality. And then,
that's cool.
The next question, of course, is how do you actually build that and design it for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think it's important, and so much so now, like you said, to have that personality, that something that people can kind of have some trust built into, instead of just a business name. They have that person or that personality that they can connect it with, and then it builds from there for sure. But yeah, how do we go about harnessing our story for a heroic brand?
So I have a formula, and it's a formula that I stole. So I stole this formula from Marvel Comics. Awesome. So don't give me credit for it. But so Marvel Comics has a formula they use to build heroes.
All right.
And
interesting.
As a if you are alive today, it's probably characters like Iron Man and Spider-Man and Captain America. They're all over our silver screens, and sell billions and billions of dollars. And what was it, Disney, when they bought Marvel, they returned their investment on merchandising from their heroes in like 6 weeks or some ridiculous thing.
Yeah,
insane, right? So they've got something. to how they build a hero. And so all I've done is just taken those big things and turn them into like, how can we write our stories, right? And tell our own story that way. So there's a few pieces, and let me actually pull up a quick document so I don't miss any of them.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it'll be really useful to cover it. And if you guys ever wanted to see this, it's on my website. It's just the outline for our hero show. So what is it? It's a hero and show outline, I believe. I can give you the link for that.
Perfect. That'd be good.
And you can share it so people can see this if they want to write it down. But there's 6 things that every hero has in common. And so the first one is their origin story, right? Okay, yep. So and every good superhero has an origin story. Yep. And it's what made them into the hero that they are. Right. Mm-hmm. And were they born a hero? Were they bit by a radioactive spider? I know you're not a huge fan of DC, but Batman was not born a hero, right? He had to train hard and he became a ninja, right? You had to train hard to get your skills. Yep. And so you have different ways that you become the hero. And so for your story, you're looking at what's your origin story? How did you become a hero, right? And I told you a little bit of mine earlier. Yeah. Right. I started as a 13-year-old and I had my first government shutdown. Right. And I tell that story a lot and I practice that story and I get better at telling that part of my story because it's part of like the foundation of how I got started as an entrepreneur. Right. Sure. And so you have your origin story. What was that radioactive spider that bit you and said, you know what, I'm going to do something different than the rest of the world. I'm not going to go to school and get a good job and get good grades. I'm going to go and start a business and do something different. Yeah. Right. So what's the origin story behind who you are and what you've become and where you're going, right? So that's the first one. Awesome. The second one is your superpower, right? Yeah. So every iconic hero has a superpower, whether that's, a fancy flying suit made by your genius intellect or the ability to call down thunder from the sky or your super strength, right? In the real world, heroes have what I call a zone of genius, right? It's a skill or a set of skills that you're either born with or you developed over time that energizes all the rest of your skills, all the things you should do. Right. And so what I look at is it's the superpower that sets you apart and allows you to help people slay their villains with your products or services, right? And help them come out on top on their own journeys. Yeah. Right. So your superpower, I like to look at it as it's the thing that really energizes everything else. So I'll give you an example just with me because I think it, I know mine really well. So it's easy to talk about. Absolutely. And it wasn't until someone actually one of my mentors actually sat down and said, hey, like, what's the one thing that you're really, really good at, right? And I had a hard time answering that question myself because I'm good at a lot of things and I've gotten really good at a lot of things. And what's interesting about that is like, for me, the thing that I'm really good at is I'm really, really good at systems and processes. So good that I actually I see systems where other people just see action, right? They see things getting done and I see the systems behind what's going on. So I can watch someone draw something and see all the things that they're doing to make certain things happen. And I can pick up drawing as a skill from watching someone else do it. Nice. Right. So I have this little thing I do every 6 months or so. I pick up a new skill just for the practice of learning things. Yeah. Right. And last year I sat down with a piano and I couldn't read music and I couldn't play the piano. And I started with an app called Musician. It's a plug for them. They're really cool. Awesome. And I spent about 6 weeks learning the piano. And at the end of 6 weeks, I could read the sheet music, and I could play melody lines one-handed on the thing. And my wife was like, how the F do you do that in 6 weeks? It takes most people a year to learn how to read music. Right. So anyways, for me, the skill behind my skills, right? That's your zone of genius. Yeah. Is for me, it's systems and processes and being able to pick those up and design them and see them and stuff like that. So everyone has something like that. You have a skill that really sets you apart. For my wife, it's empathy, right? She is able to put herself in someone else's shoes and feel them and understand them in ways that is just insane, right? My business partner is that way as well. And it's next level empathy. And what's interesting is those kind of skills, they allow you to do all sorts of things. It's really what energizes you to do other things and pick up new skills. And there's something in there, something that you have that's your superpower, right? Cool. And this is where you have to ask yourself that question. Ask your 5 or 10 closest friends, and ask some strangers that that just have minor relationship with you. What do you think? Hey, what do you think my superpower is? What's my zone of genius? One thing I'm really good at. You'll get interesting responses, and what you'll find is if you can look at the commonalities between how people respond to you, you'll see the thread of commonality, and that's where you'll see you're like, oh, you know what, that's probably the thing.
That's cool.
And it can take you a little while to find, but once you sort of nail what it is, and you start building your business around your superpower, right? That's where our push button podcast came in, is being able to build those systems up, because that's where my skill is building the systems and implementing those systems, stuff like that. Then you can grow your business a lot faster because you're building it on something that you're really, really good
at. Yep.
So yeah, right. And there's a lot of things that people talk about. You should shore up your weaknesses and ignore your strengths, kind of thing. And I sort of like, if you want to shore up your weaknesses, hire people that have those as strengths and focus on your strength.
Absolutely, right? I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes more sense. It's simpler that way.
Absolutely. So the third thing is your distinct personality, right? And your distinct personality is, and this is something that we don't talk about on the show a lot because it's hard. It's ethereal, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But your distinct personality is your personality turned up to 11.
Okay.
Right. When you're on stage, right? If you've ever been through a theater class and they tell you like, hey, you have to make your face big enough that the person in the back on the 500, they need to be able to see your emotion.
Yep.
Right. And so when you get on stage, right, and we are on stage all the time as a heroic brand, right? Sitting on a podcast like this, or going onto your YouTube shows, or actually speaking on stage, or interacting with your clients, whatever it is that you do, anytime that you're engaging with your business, you need to turn the dial up a little bit on your personality, right? And so that's turn up a little bit of whatever the qualities are that make you who you are, right? Make you part of your brand, your personality, right? And you can see that it's done in comic books all the time, right? If you see, Tony Stark is snarky, funny, and what's his name? Peter Parker is he's the teenager who's always in his head and cracking jokes, and and what is his name? Deadpool's always cracking, below the belt humor and stuff like that. And their personality is cranked up to 11, right? There's no questioning who they are. Right. And if you want to look into the marketing world, take a look at people like Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins, exactly who he is. He's always on fire. He's always got energy, right? That's part of his brand, is that distinct personality. Same with Dan Kennedy, right? Dan Kennedy was known as the no bullshit guy. And if you ever heard him up on stage, he's always talking no bullshit. And this is just the way it is. He's quick and he's short and he's to the point, and there's no bullshit in what he says.
Right.
Right. If you met the guy in the real world, he's a teddy bear, but his brand was no bullshit, right? That's part of his distinct personality. So what's interesting is you can choose who that is for you, right? It works best if it's authentic with your character,
right?
Because then you're not playing someone on stage; you're just being yourself at a little bit higher degree. But you can actually totally play up a different character if you want.
For sure.
So I find it easier to just be me at 11, if that makes sense.
Authentic, at a higher level. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's your distinct personality.
Cool.
Okay. So the next one is your fatal flaw. That's the flip side of your superpowers, right? Yeah. And so your fatal flaw, just like every Superman has his kryptonite. Wonder Woman can't remove her bracelets of victory without going mad, right? We all have our fatal flaw, right? And your fatal flaw is what humanizes you to your audience. What's the thing that you are not good at? Where's your weakness lie? And where's your vulnerability, right? Yep. This is a I don't mean to get too terribly political, but President Trump just spoke the other day, right? In, where was he? Tulsa. And I watched his thing. And one of the things that he did is he told a story on stage that was very, it was a very like vulnerable moment where he got up and he was talking about some of his own weakness stuff. And there's one of the reasons why he's so popular with his base is because he has that ability to show his weakness, right? So anyways, for any of your distinct personality, having the vulnerability that humanizes you is what's going to, especially if you're in any sort of business that you're helping people one-on-one, like coaching, or if you're selling people education, it's almost more important than if you're selling physical products or if you're selling other goods and services. People have to believe that that A, that you're a superhero, but B, that what you have is achievable. Yeah. Right. That you don't have some sort of, magical abilities that are outside of the human, scope of experience. Right. That, so your fatal flaw humanizes you and it lets you come in and actually be a little bit who you are. And then there's two more pieces. So the next one is your common enemy. Your common enemy is what you fight against. It's your arch nemesis, right? Every superhero has their arch nemesis. It's a thing that you constantly have to fight against in the world, right? If you're familiar with Frank Kern is fighting against this idea that if you put money into a funnel that you should be able to get $2 out. You put money in, get money out. So he's fighting against this idea that paid media is not a way to generate income, right? And so like you always have like, what's the enemy that you're fighting against? Right. And for me, one of the things that I'm constantly fighting against is this idea that, and I mentioned already, like that entrepreneurs are not heroes, right? And they are in fact heroes, right? Entrepreneurs aren't villains, they're heroes. That's the thing that I'm fighting against. And what I do is I help people build their heroic brand, right? That's the thing that I help them do, is build a heroic brand and then build their content machine that really drives their sales and stuff like that. So it really helps solidify your message, right? The thing that you're fighting against, the thing that you stand against, it makes you a little bit polarizing, especially if you can take a really clear stand against something. And when you're polarizing, you attract audience, right? It pushes away the people you don't want to work with and attracts the people that you do. So there's that. And then of course the flip side of that is your driving force, right? Your driving force is your common the thing that you're fighting for, right? Is your mission, your stance, right? So just like Spider-Man is fighting to save New York, or Batman fights to save Gotham, or Google fights to index and categorize all the world's information. Right. You have something that you're fighting for in your business. Right. And so that's the mission that you have. And it's the thing that you're constantly talking about. Right. For me, right, it's about building that heroic brand that allows you to, in my case, we're looking to help people get their lives back from their business. All right. So we talk a lot about, building your brand, building your systems, building your team, and that kind of stuff that allows you, so your business doesn't take over your life, it supports your life. Right. So you have things that you're fighting for. And that's really it. That's the pieces of how you put together a heroic brand. Right. Or like your brand story. Right. And that's all very ethereal. I actually have and I can give this to you. I have a document that I use that's just like how to write an about page story. And it's like a fill in the blank template. I'll see if I can get you a copy of it. It's just a Google Drive document. So your audience could just click on it and make a copy and use it. But I use it on all of our sites. And one of the things that's really important is if you look at your stats across pretty much every website you've ever built, we built a lot of them for big brands. Homepage is most visited page. Organically, and your about page is your second most visited page organically, right? So that doesn't account the pages that you're promoting with ads, because you can get a lot of page views on pages that you're promoting with ads, but organically your about page will be the second most visited page on your website. And most people do a terrible job of building about pages, right? They just slap up a bio that looks like it came off of your school, the school thing in your yearbook or whatever, or it looks like a resume. It's not an engaging story. Right. And you want your story. And like the reason I say the about page is because it's something we all have our website for our business. We all have an about page and nobody does it right. And it's a good place to start practicing putting this ethereal idea of your heroic character into a story form. Right. And, it's going to go further than that. Right. It's going to go into how you put your content together and how you present your brand and your actual like look and feel of your brand. It goes into a lot of things. But a good place to start is your about page story. And your about page, so your about page has a couple of pieces to it, and like I said, I can give you the template for that. But the basic idea is you want to have a story, that says, hey, here's where I am today, and here's what I can help you with, right? Here's why I do what we do. Here's what my life was like when we first started out, right? Here, and so here's how we got to a certain place, and here's where the big turnover was, right? Where something happened and there's a shift in your life and your business that changed your gears and brought you to where you are now. And so it's just a framework. It's a sort of a hero's journey style framework for writing an about page, and it ends on the same place where it started. Like, here's where we are now. We're really good at doing this thing and providing this service. If you want our help, do this thing, right? It's a call to adventure. And so you have a call to adventure in your story that says, hey, come and join us if you want to get you want to get this kind of help or this kind of results in your life or your business. And it's good practice too, because everything in your business should end with some sort of a call to adventure. Right? You should join me on the next stage of your journey, right? Let me help you get to where you're going. And people ignore that on their about page, and they ignored it on pretty much everything they do. But anyways, if you can practice it on something as boring as the average about page and turn it into an engaging story that drives further into your sales funnels, that's a great foundation for your business. So anyways, I'll make sure your audience has a copy of that. And if you want to see example of it, I'm sure you actually, if you looked at my website, we use the same template on my about page that you probably got the details for our bio off of.
Yeah, and guys, check out and the links and stuff will be in the show notes. But just it's so much good information, and so cool of how it's built out and based on the Marvel comics, of course. But the origin story, superpower, distinct personality, fatal flaw, common enemy, and a driving force, guys. And that's the gist of how you can build a heroic story around yourself, your brand, and really start off on a solid foot. So amazing information, education on that, Richard. So we appreciate that. I like to end to connecting our guests with a little bit with pencil leadership. So there's 5 traits of pencil leadership. The 5th one is a pencil is made to leave a mark. And so we're here to do the same thing. And so when everything is said and done for you here on earth, what do you want your mark to be?
For me?
Yeah.
So I have 2 answers to that question.
Perfect.
One of them is something that I heard on a TV show once, and I can't remember what show it was. Someone in your audience probably knows. But my wife is constantly watching TV shows in the background, so I'm like hearing stuff every once in a while. But anyways, it was the greatest gift that you can give the world is raising up the next generation, right? And raising them up well.
Yep.
And so we've got 4 children, and my primary legacy that I want to leave to the world is I want to have 4 children who are better off than I was, right? Who are good citizens to society and are going to, bring their own value to the world, right? And who knows what that's going to look like. But so far, I think it's going well. My kids are amazing.
That's awesome.
But yeah, that's the first one. And the second one is something we've already talked about, and that is I want to change the cultural view of entrepreneurs from being villains to being heroes. I'm already making a small impact on that with people who are on our shows. And I've had a couple of our guests, come back afterwards and be like, just coming on your show and thinking through my own story as a hero has changed the way that I look at my business and changed the way that I look at myself and look at what I do. And I want to have that impact on as many people as possible. And hopefully, our brand, the RichardMatthews.me brand, where we build these brands for people, and our Push Button podcast and our Hero Show brands, all that stuff is all sort of geared towards helping entrepreneurs build a business that they're proud of. That's a heroic brand, right? Because heroes leave a mark, right? Just like, they leave a legacy, and that's what we're trying to do.
Awesome. I love it, Richard. That's a great mark to want to leave for sure. And you're definitely doing it. So I'm excited to see how it continues to grow. Before we say goodbye, how can people connect with you? I know you said you're RichardMatthews.me. Anywhere else? Obviously your podcast.
So RichardMatthews.me is where most of my stuff is located. So the Hero Show is on there. Actually, if you go to the website, I'm in the process of rebranding it. Where actually I finally took the plunge and we're going like full on comic book style for the brand, which is
looks good.
It was a more like high end looking brand before. And I was like, if I'm gonna take the plunge into this whole heroic brand, I should just go for it. But I had this fear of like feeling cheesy, if that makes sense, over the heroic brand. So anyways, I finally like bit the bullet after years of having this heroic brand and started to bring some of the comic book styling into that. But anyways, so the Hero Show is on there, and a lot of our main services and stuff are on there. And then the other one is our Push Button Podcast website. Perfect. So it's pushbuttonpodcasts.com for anyone who's looking for building a content machine in their business and wants to have someone else handle it all for them, so they can just, do what they love, right? You do what you love, we do the rest.
That's awesome. So guys, check it out. We'll put the links in the show notes. Richard, any chance that you're going to be recording or speaking in a superhero costume in the future?
So I don't have any superhero costumes other than ones that my children fit into, but I can tell you my 6-year-old daughter
Uh-huh.
She has gone as Iron Man to Halloween every year since she was 2 years old.
Okay.
Because she's like, when she was two, she didn't love Iron Man. She was Iron Man, and
That's
she went
awesome.
through a whole stage in her life where it was like, "How are you doing, Zariah?" And she was like, "I am not Zariah. I'm Iron Man." And
That's awesome.
yeah, so I was like, "Can I call you Tony?" And she was like, "That's acceptable, but it's Iron Man or Tony, not Zariah." So she went through a whole like six month stage in her life where she was Iron Man.
That's
So we have lots of superheroes going on in our family all the
I
time.
bet. That's awesome.
Right now it's Pokemon. So
Oh
Ash
wow.
Ketchum is the
Okay.
superhero of our house right now.
There you go. Awesome. Well, Richard, again, we really appreciate you taking time out to kind of share this and bring value to the audience. And so grateful for you and what you're doing. And yeah, guys, check out everything Richard is doing.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
And guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Pencil Leadership Live on Facebook or YouTube. If you liked it, head over to wherever you listen to podcasts, leave a review, subscribe, share it with somebody else so they can learn and they can connect with Richard and find out more about what he's doing and make a difference in their lives as well. So thanks you again, guys, and let's go out and be pencil leaders.